There's a lot of kids out there who need your help, and a donation to St. Jude could potentially save them. Link to my fundraiser is in the description. Also, expect a quick word about them at the end of the video.
I was frozen today!
I'm gonna keep this on standby. It's definitely necessary. I don't know whether or not this is a popular opinion, but out of all the seasons, winter is my personal favorite. I've always preferred the cold over the heat, though not to that ridiculous of a degree, and even taking holidays out of the question for a second, I just enjoy the general beauty and serenity of winter, even when it doesn't snow. Heck, it's generally considered a blessing when it snows where I am from, but when it does, it adds to the atmosphere and it's just fun to walk around in. In the context of video games though, levels and areas with a winter aesthetic can generally be some of the prettiest parts of the game graphically, as well as generally fun and memorable in terms of gameplay, depending on the general contents of it of course. Since I'm so fond of this theme, and because I decided to break away from reviewing a game during one of these specials for a change, I decided to do a top 12 countdown dedicated to my favorite winter levels. And I picked the top 12 because December's the 12th month of the year, and despite calling this a holiday special to welcome those who celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or any other holiday around this time, it's also a reference to the 12 days of Christmas. I'd also like to say that while my personal enjoyment of each level is the biggest factor of the order, I'll also consider how effectively it uses the winter theme in terms of visuals and or level design, since there are a couple entries that do mix in with traits of other kinds of levels. You'll see what I mean when we get into things. Unless you freeze up along the way. I told you I'd keep on standby, so chill.
Chill!
Well, it is the holidays, so it's fitting to put a level themed after Christmas on here. 'Tis the season, am I right? Now there's absolutely no shortage of winter levels from the Crash Bandicoot series I could have slid onto here, like a sled on a fresh sheet of snow, despite the fact that I've only played the Insane Trilogy, Nitro Fueled, and Crash 4, but there's a lot I really enjoy about Gingerbread Joyride. Firstly, with it taking place in a town made out of gingerbread houses during a snowy evening, most likely during Christmas Eve, the track goes all in making it feel appropriate with the holiday from a visual standpoint. The snow theme, while kept at a relatively safe level compared to other ice levels, even ones in this game, still is used to create an atmosphere that fits the jolliest time of the year. And all the giant food thrown in makes you really hungry, especially those candy cane poles and that giant chocolate fountain.
Oh, I'd give anything to be down there, face first in that fluffy, frozen frosting myself!
With you on that one, Stu. But you can only get distracted by all this for so long before you lose the race. The track holds a lot of sharp turns for you to prepare for, and plenty of shortcuts that require good timing and coordination to take. And because this is CTR Nitro Fueled, utilizing all these is key in keeping your speed going, as some of these shortcuts can only be accessed via Blue Fire, a mechanic given by corresponding speed boosters. And there are a select number of moments for you to watch out for if you want to keep it for as long as possible, including these two giant jelly blobs that will flatten you if you get too close to them. In hindsight, you could argue that this is more of a food level than a winter level, because ice is not too big of a factor in the track design, but with it still being a big part visually, and with it also being part of a holiday Grand Prix, complete with a moose playable character, and some snow carts for good measure, I feel like it's totally in place here. And even so, this is still a very entertaining track that really does get the holiday spirit within me going. Definitely one of my favorites of the post-launch courses. Sadly, there aren't any more Christmas-themed levels on here, which is really cold. But I'd say it's both Hoth and cold. Worth the shot of trying to tie these two segments together. With how many times the Battle of Hoth from The Empire Strikes Back has been adapted into video games, it's made me all the more curious to see how just being out in the field, not involved in it at all, would be. And while it's Skywalker Saga, we do get the Echo Base as the main hub for it, complete with a Wampa for a playable character.
You rejected my offer to place no Master Ball, and now I shall bring in the worst hailstorm of your feeble lives!
The level, Hoth and Cold, did answer that call. Now, it may not seem like much is going on here. I mean, it's just Han and a rebel general searching for Luke after he got kidnapped by a Wampa that might have been Cookie Monster, but I'm not quite sure. But it chooses to go all in with what you can do with this. The snowfield is very vast, but it has plenty of big and little areas that have puzzles for mini-kits, or ways to progress to your objective of aligning satellites, some standard, some using things like the broken snow spear to shoot ice and bring a bridge down. There aren't that many enemies, but there are probe droids that you can take care of stealthily for a challenge, and zip wires and tauntauns to make traversal more convenient. I'll even admit that setting the level at night does a lot in giving it its own form of beauty, but it doesn't go all in to let the need to rescue Luke sink in with how the wind is howling and with the lighting not being 100% saturated. I'll admit that this level is mostly on here because of the novelty of looking around an iconic planet, but there's plenty here that makes actually playing the level, let alone getting everything, that much more entertaining.
This way to Bear Country. You'll know when you're there. As soon as you enter, you'll feel like a bear. A great grizzly bear.
I like bears, okay? The overall graphical style of the aWiibo really does wonders in bringing out the beauty of its levels, and among them all, one of my personal favorite examples is Will-O-the-Wisp snow area, Bars Reach. This place is absolutely gorgeous with all the snow on the ground and all the ice frozen in strange formations, and does the lighting and atmospheric music really bring it out further. And it does give points for having varied sections, from just the normal forest, to the treetops, to the caverns down below. As the level though, given you'll probably come here once you've got some neat knickknacks, especially since you need to use the feather to make Papa Bear sneeze just to enter, the level is designed to account for them. This is particularly notable because of one gimmick, trying to manipulate fireballs to certain furnaces to unlock the way forward. I honestly really like this, as it's really cool to see a lot of this defrost thanks to the flames, but doing so also defrosts certain enemies and hazards, making traversal a lot less repetitive. The enemies here are a little trickier to work around than in other areas, as some of you need to move around are placed in challenging layouts, and these guys are a lot tougher to take down. The area is also laid out in a way where it challenges you on finding ways to unlock shorter and safer routes, but it doesn't make it arduous, and it rewards you for thinking outside the box, whether that be for progression or finding extra goodies. This is also where you get the light burst, meaning you could throw your own fireballs. Yum! Top that off with a chase sequence awaiting you at the top, and some neat ways this part can connect to some other areas, and this is just a really frozen, solid level for an amazing game to have. When you put the theme of winter and Pokemon into the same sentence, you'd likely think how the ice type can be so much better than it is, all the gym puzzles that use ice physics, or that one snowfield in Xeno where you move at this pace. That's definitely what Cold Feet looks like, and I would not blame you. In fact, it was hard to think about what winter level I should go with, since it does have good ones. But then I decided that the Alabaster Icelands would fit very well on here. Being one of the last areas of the game, the Alabaster Icelands keeps up the game's trend of making each location feel massive and larger than life. But with all the space they have to use, with all the vast snowfields, the cramped ice caverns down below, and even the likes of Avalug's Legacy with the giant ice mass, like Acuity and Snowpoint Temple, there's always something new to find. And to emphasize all this space, this is the area where you get Hisui and Braviary as the right Pokemon, which does wonders for making the game feel a lot more open. I mean, come on, you're falling with style over large distances, even when you should logically freeze riding in these cold winds. I guess the cold doesn't bother the player anyway. The Pokemon here are also incredibly varied, meaning more team options, and some are even ridiculously high leveled at this point. It even has a great boss fight with Noble Avalugg, as the ice projectiles combined with the surface you have to work with require you to stay frosty at all times. And for one more thing, I can kinda see why the Pearl Clan can handle the cold so well, because they have a hot spring to help them out. Hot springs are pretty neato. I really had to think about what winter level from Tropical Freeze I wanted to put on here, because there really isn't a level in general I dislike. I thought about Frosty Fruits for a bit, but I think that one is less winter and more of a factory that just so happens to be refrigerated. I also thought about the entirety of Donkey Kong Island, because I think the way it adds winter themes to established ideas is beyond creative. But out of every level in that world, Cliffside Slide is definitely my favorite. The fact that the silhouetted level is a plus right off the bat, as the art style is just gorgeous, but the scenario takes it even further. This takes place in the Cliff World from Returns during an avalanche that is ripping a lot of the environment apart, and they go nuts with this, both in visuals and overall gameplay. The silhouettes and winter scenery are cleverly used to create a feeling of dread to convey what the snowmats have done to the place, and how you'll definitely be frozen today if you fall into the snow stream just below your feet. Most of the time, you do not have a ton of space to work with, and there are times where the surfaces you can use to progress begin to sink into the snow when you use them. Enemy placement here can also be tricky, and the extra goodies really require a keen eye and good timing to get, especially since this isn't the last world of the game. But it feels like the game is giving you just the right amount of time and wiggle room to do a lot of this, and it feels satisfying yet generally intense to fight through this avalanche and get to the top. And it just escalates as you go further, seeing even the bigger architecture you use like a giant T-Rex skull fall into the void of white behind you, but it's able to maintain this steady pace no matter what. And I want to praise the music as well. Sure, the Snowman's theme is used for other levels in the game, but I think it really fits here because the combination of it and the avalanche set a presence for what you're truly up against on your quest to get the island back. And I feel that nails what this level is all about. I may not talk about The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess that often, but reassured, I still think the game is fantastic. I think the tone having a little more melodrama compared to other games is welcome. I really enjoy the dark fantasy art direction, and the dungeon lineup is pretty spot on. While it does a good job with its own takes on previously established ideas, sometimes it decides to do something a little different, like with its winter level, the Snow Peak Ruins. I say different because when you hear the term Zelda Dungeon, you're about to think of this temple up in the mountains, or within a body of water, or somewhere, but the Snow Peak Ruins is actually a mansion where a Yeti couple live, no less. And as it turns out, this dungeon is largely a mini story about these two, as not only do they live in some parts of the mansion, leaving other parts to the monsters, but thanks to the mirror shard that fell here, Yetta, the female Yeti, has both fallen ill and has lost some of her memories, including the location of the key to the bedroom. From there, the journey through this place takes you to several areas, from a snowy courtyard to various rooms run down and likely coated with ice. The entire place, while visually pleasing, is very unsettling. It's hard to tell what exactly has become of it ever since the Yetis chose to come in, or when the mirror shard landed here. Even just thinking about that gives me the chills. But at the same time, focusing on the thought-provoking puzzles and getting ingredients needed to make a soup for Yetta does put the mind at ease. Speaking of puzzles, this is also where you get a personal favorite dungeon item of mine, the ball and chain. Really fun to smash ice with this thing, and the puzzles with it are good too. Though the one thing about the dungeon that I'm not a fan of is the boss. Concept's cool, with Yetta getting possessed and turning into an ice monster, but the fight in general isn't very fun, and among the easiest fights in the game, maybe even the entire series. But everything else about this dungeon is just great. The atmosphere, the layout, the puzzles, the subplot, and even the conclusion where the two Yetis make up and show their affection towards one another. Where you can collect the hearts that come from them as health. Jeez, love really is the most powerful force of all. Man, I've been bringing up this game a lot as of late. One of my favorite things about Thieves in Time is how well it was able to utilize time periods for imaginative level design. I think they all hit home runs with this, but we're going to talk about when the game went way back in time. Yeah, there's a lot going on with Clan the Cave Raccoon that convinced me to put it on this list. Taking place within the Ice Age, the scenery and level design here is a lot different than what we've seen so far. Sure, we got snow, but with all the architecture made out of dinosaur bones and rugged trees, with pterodactylness, and the out-of-place machinery that our girlfriend the Grizz here set up to steal eggs, the chapter has an immediate identity just based on thematics. It's fun to traverse around, solve all the puzzles, including ones that require equipment found in later chapters, find all that you can, including all the various treasures, not to mention mess with the guards, who I like to imagine Ray Romano and Dennis Leary's voices coming out of.
Then the hungry tiger ate the pesky little kids.
But the missions within easily take the cake. They all take you to different parts of the area, from the various caves that host very well-designed platforming challenges, to the mountains that'll put Bob's ice climbing to work, to the parts that require you to use Sly's new saber-tooth tiger costume to pounce at long distances, to the final assault on Grizz's operations. There really isn't a dull moment in this chapter. Heck, even the boss fight had Murray and Grizz on ice. And by that I mean they fight on a frozen sheet of ice. But real talk, with all the puzzle elements, the way Grizz attacks, and with the little dancing snippets thrown in here and there, this is another entertaining fight. Given Thieves in Time's strong level lineup, it's hard to say that Clan of the Cave Raccoon is among the best, but the fact that it's kept such good design going while putting its own spin on things is enough for me to enjoy it and put it on here. It feels weird to put a Mario Kart track on here instead of a level from a traditional Mario game. But I feel like since Mario Kart tracks can get so amazingly fun and creative, it can be just as easy to think positively about them. In the context of all of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe though, with how weird it got with original ideas, and with how creative it got with ideas that have been done before, it was bound to have at least one winter level like this. And it actually has quite a few of this caliber, including a Christmas themed one carried over from Tour. But Mount Wario is still one of MK8's best tracks, just in general. First of all, this is one of the game's tracks that goes from point A to point B, a concept that was introduced in Mario Kart 7 that I loved, and was overjoyed to see it retained. Because the track doesn't loop, Each section has all the freedom in the world to do literally whatever it wants, and Mount Warrior basically chooses to be a race that you'd see in the Olympics that starts up in the mountain that is mostly made out of ice and tests awareness of positioning before cutting through a dam that has boost pads on the walls. There's a lot of mechanics used in these sections, and with the game not being so radical with these changes, they're always entertaining. But the third section is where you really feel the Olympic influence, as there's a mogul section that even has bumps that convince Warrior chose because of DK Summit, and a ski jumping segment. Now that I'm thinking about it, this track reminds me a lot of the Winter Sports Champion race from Mario and Sonic at the Sochi Olympics. Both start off on a mountain before gradually making changes at certain intervals, either through what you're using or the level itself, before being an all-out dash to the finish line. Only difference is that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a good game. Combine all this with fun shortcuts to pull off, and an absolute jam of a music track, and this is always a track that is a blizzard of enjoyment every time. The one thing that usually catches my interest in any area in any Metroid game, aside from solid level design, is the general atmosphere and presentation. I often like to take in how each area looks, and use any details or lore to imagine what they were originally like. This is something my favorite entry in the series, Metroid Prime, is especially good with, and Leave It to the Winter level, Phendrana Drifts, to be a shining example of that. I was in absolute awe when I first arrived here, and was greeted by the snowy cliffs and that beautiful music track. But I was further engaged when I saw that a lot of this level is what remains of ancient Chozo ruins. I often like to wonder just how this place was to the Chozo before everything went terribly wrong when I tried to explore it all and scan up on lore left behind. It's engaging, yet oddly relaxing. Except for when the Shigoths lying around are attacking you, or when you connect it to what the space pirates have been doing. Speaking of the latter, they've set up shop here with a research lab that's housing Metroids, which does house a good contrast to all the ice surrounding it, both on the shorelines and on Phendrana's edge, which takes you inside the ice caverns that have more challenges requiring upgrades awaiting, and adding a techno beat to the previously mentioned music, which is a pretty cool move. I feel like each area has its own story to tell, but it's also a really well designed area that gives you a lot of freedom to find your own ways forward, and just explore what's given. So notable examples of upgrades here are the Wave Beam, the Thermal Visor, the Gravity Suit, and the Spire Ball, the last of which you get right after defeating the main boss of the area, Thardus, who, by the way, is an immensely solid fight that makes good use of a lot of your kit. Even if Metroid Prime did a wonderful job with every area of Town 4, I feel Phendrana Drifts is the best showcase of what this game has to offer, and it's the one area I love coming back to the most whenever I replay this incredible game. I may not have done anything particularly notable for this game's 10th anniversary, but I just want to reiterate how much I adore Dust Elysian Tale. From its really engaging story that knows how to handle its dark themes and treats itself with just the right amount of seriousness while still having a good sense of humor, to the really enjoyable combat, the gorgeous art style, this is a gem I think everyone should pick up. And we've got Winter level to show its positives in full force with the Blackmore Mountains. This area comes pretty late in the game, so you'll likely be pretty good on stats and equipment by this point, so this is where a lot of the game's challenge starts to come at you, from enemies that hit hard to generally tricky platforming sections, which includes avalanches. But it doesn't feel like a difficulty spike by any means. Each obstacle is placed in a manner where you can prepare for them in advance, while still having enough room to stand, and each encounter stays true to what made the combat so fun to begin with, without sacrificing anything. It also keeps the exploration intact as well. Because this is late in the game, you'll have just about every movement upgrade by now, so you're encouraged to look around and see what you can find, especially with the double jump you just got. Double jumps open up a lot. To add on to that, this is one of the best looking areas in the game, and that's sure an accomplishment. From the frozen winds to all the avalanches, to even a detail as small as there being poofs of snow that follow your footsteps. Even the smallest of details can go such a long way. The Blackmore Mountains is honestly such a good representation of what the game has to offer. It's visually stunning, but it also has a lot of good design choices that just work all together. Happy 10th anniversary, Dust. You sure have deserved all the praise you've gotten after all this time. In spite of all its weaker aspects, I absolutely love Sonic Unleashed. And one of the biggest contributing factors to that is the levels themselves. There are a ton of great ideas that the game does everything it can with, and they have plenty of moments that I always love playing through. And the level Cool Edge in Holoska is one particular area that I feel this is the most noticeable. I always find it rewarding to keep the speed going in some form, and take in the scenery as I go, and during the day, Cool Edge absolutely nails this design choice. Every section of this level, from the snowfields to the ice caves and inclines, to this part where you run across water, all have plenty of room for you to just blitz by while having well-placed obstacles to stop you from getting carried away, and the occasional shortcut that require more precision from you, rewarding skilled players. There's also plenty of 2D sections with some more well-placed shortcuts and unique set pieces like this bridge that crumbles behind you, and a few times we ride on a bobsled through ice tubes and across a giant whale. Now that's having fun with the idea. Even if I very much prefer the day stages in general, the night stages here are a good time too. There's plenty of fun and engaging platforming and combat here, but the extra gimmicks like these ice slides and collapsing ice pillars do make it feel distinct enough. On top of all that, this is hands down where the game's presentation is at some of its best. The lighting makes each part of this frozen tundra look positively mystifying, and holy cow, does each particle effect going off amplify it. I still have trouble believing this came out in 2008. And because of all this, Coolidge is not only my personal favorite level in the game, but it's also one of my personal favorite levels in all of Sonic. It's almost time to dash through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh to number 1. But first, let's give the honorable mentions their dues. Arendelle from Kingdom Hearts 3. I kinda wish we actually got to go to the kingdom and inside Elsa's castle, but I'll take the ice dungeon as a compromise, and exploring the mountain is really fun nonetheless. Also, the sliding minigame is really enjoyable, and having the snow monster as a party member is great. But sadly, there's no Oaken. Very cold of you, game. Maklu 4 from Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the best areas of the game visually, and the encounters with the natives and Fin Fang Foom are memorable. Lakeside Resort from The Last of Us has some of the best presentation of the game and some of the best moments in terms of gameplay and narrative. Joel fighting against a blizzard to rescue Ellie always gives me butterflies in my stomach. The Battle for Blizzard Bridge from Kirby and the Forgotten Land, one time where Kirby used the snow theme for beauty and a general moody atmosphere. Also some of the best secrets in the whole game. The Crown Tundra from Pokemon Sword and Shield. This one is a technicality since not all of it is coated with ice, but a lot of it is, so I'll count it. Besides, I just love how big this area feels and all the different Pokemon you can find. The Snow Kingdom from Mario Odyssey. More of the fun the game was already providing, plus a fun racing minigame. Also, yes, I always choose to go in swimming trunks because Mario can resist the cold pretty well in it, despite shivering in his idle animation. Midas of the North, eh? From Sly 2. One of the best design levels of the game, with plenty of fun moments. The Lumberjack games are great as a final operation, and the battle with John Bassan is by far the best boss in the game. And finally, Clapper's Cavern from Donkey Kong Country 2. Picking a favorite ice level in this game really came down to just which one had my favorite gimmick, and Clapper freezing the water easily takes the cake. Or in this case, the ice cream cake for me. In hindsight, there really isn't that much of a difference in terms of base concept with my number 1 compared to levels we've already seen on here, as it is just a snowy mountain. But sometimes, it's not that what decides the placement, it's the execution. And in that way, Volek Mountain from Xenoblade Chronicles is a breathtaking level. Xenoblade in general has a specialty of taking any idea and making it as grand as it wants, and Volek Mountain is easily one of my favorite examples. Since not a whole lot of sunlight reaches this area of the Bionis, the mountain is not only covered with snow, but also has a ton of unusual architecture growing around, especially these crystals. These are incredibly pleasant to look at during the day, but when night falls, wow. Just wow. I really needed to stop for a moment to really appreciate all of this. I mean, the game already had a strong sense of majesty to it, but this went above and beyond. This alone made this such a great idea, but it also made the general gameplay fun as well. This is one of the largest areas in the game, with several different elevation levels, all with their own sections and landmarks to journey to. And because this area is set generally late into the adventure, the fauna here do not mess around, and that includes all the super bosses that will spawn here later down the line. Just in case you want to stay cool with the gamers. It's always fun to find all these secrets and journey to all the locations that have some relevance to the lore, and even to the overall plot. But the icing on the cake is easily the ice physics here. Like, seriously, the stuff you can do with them makes me laugh so hard that I could just freeze up. And I think the devs were aware of how funny they were, which is even better. There really isn't anything I particularly dislike about this place. The exploration and quest completion is fun as it always has been, it's a visual treat, and everything great about the game just comes together to make one of my favorite areas in it, and hands down, my favorite winter level. I'm Lang Ripper, thank you for watching, and I hope it made the holidays just a little bit better for you. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider donating to my Play Life campaign for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. This organization works endlessly to help sick kids, and I hope to use my content to help spread awareness and maybe help them out. Even the smallest thing can lead to a holiday miracle for someone. With all that said, stay frosty everyone. I do not see myself beating that record with anything else anytime soon. See you all next year.